Okay, some of the things that I'm still working on the bass, it's an ongoing process. Utilizing the double thumb down and up in conjunction with the other fingers of the right hand and the left hand, plucking and hammer on. But I'm just going to stay with the right hand for now. So on a G string, down and up, right? I get asked questions about this all the time, so here it is. Down and up. Practice that on every string. Okay? And eventually you want to make sure that you start playing notes with every technique. Because a lot of times we just learn a technique and we play it as a technique and that's it. But the goal is to make music. So with every technique, I want to always be able to turn it into music. So I always try to find a musical way to practice. So instead of just doing this for hours, maybe a scale. Just 1-5-9. All of a sudden it's starting to sound like music, but I'm getting some practice out of it also. So I always try to find a way to turn the techniques into music. Another thing that we can do with I haven't seen people doing much with the double thumb, but I do see people doing it with a pick, is to start playing with different rhythmic, choices rhythmically. So let's say we're going to go 2 downs and an up. That's endless. You can start doing 2 downs, 2 ups, whatever you want to do. Another thing that I like to do, this is one that I'm still figuring out how to utilize. So I'll show it to you so that you can figure out how to do it and then show me. Is you rake across one or all of the strings and then come up with the thumb. So a very easy way to make it sound like you're doing something that's harder than it really is. Just rub across and then come out. So you want to practice going over all of the strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, then up, 1, 2, 3, up, 1, 2, up, 1 up. Yeah. Okay. 4 strings, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So let's say I'm doing a groove. Another thing I haven't even figured out yet really how to do that well, but I figured I'd just throw something new in there. Like again, if you figure it out, come show me. Okay, that's still just dealing with down and up. Those are just a few ways of utilizing the down and up thumb in a way other than just going down and up. Okay. Now when we start combining plucking, let's say down, up, and pluck, that's all on the G string. You want to learn how to do it all on the D string. A, E. Now when I'm doing it on these inner strings, the A and the D string, I don't have the luxury of when my thumb hits to let my fingers fly out here. Like when I'm just thumbing on the E string, my fingers can be out here. If I'm going to pluck on the inner strings, A and D, my fingers don't have the luxury of being out there. It's going to take too much effort and too much time to try to get them back in there. It can be done, but in my mind it's wasted motion. So as my thumb hits, my index finger's going in between the string, ready to pluck. So my thumb hits, And if I want to, pluck with index, thumb, pluck, or thumb, up, pluck. And if you look, you'll see that index finger is in there, ready to go. Okay, and then the same thing with two plucks. Thumb, up, pluck, pluck. You also want to learn how to do all of that on one string. And if you want to start incorporating, more than just these fingers, you can do that also. But then start playing with rhythmic games. Let's say I go 2 downs with my thumb, then up, index, middle. Okay. Another neat game is to say we're going to play 4 notes, right? Down, up, index, middle, but we're going to accent every third one. So we got these 4 notes, down, up, pluck, pluck, 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're going to accent every 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That gets kind of hard when you start to speed it up. Then you start doing things where you accent every 5th note, things like that. Kind of got that from Steve Bailey, because he does a thing when Steve's playing. He uses these 3 fingers, and he'll go forwards and backwards, like 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. But then he'll play around with different accents, where he's accenting where this is a 4-note pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. He'll accent every 3rd or every 5th. And so I started incorporating that with the thumb technique. And the goal in this, whether you use it or not, the goal is to be able to have that freedom over the technique. So that if you practice all these techniques, the same way we have freedom over these fingers. When we use 2 fingers, we can play groups of 5s, 7s. We should be able to do the same thing with our thumbs and fingers, because the thumb is just another way to hit the string. Okay, most of us think of the thumb as being funk music in the key of E. Of course it's that, but it should be more also. So when you get control over these techniques, it means exactly that. You control the techniques rather than the techniques controlling you. So practice and have fun. Growing up on the bass, learning to play bass, there were a few main people that I studied. Stanley Clarke being one, probably the main one. Jaco Pastorius was another, and Larry Graham was another. And of course there were Bootsy, Louis Johnson, James Jamerson. Even though I didn't know who James Jamerson was, I just knew the music. There were many, many bass players who even to this day I don't know their names. I probably do know their names, but don't know that that was the guy that played that song, But there's so many songs that I grew up playing and didn't really know who the bass players were, like all the bass players that played the Jackson 5 material and a lot of the Motown, like James Jamerson and some of the other guys, like all the music that Carol Kay played on, or Chuck Rainey, so much music, I don't know them all. There's no way to know them all. They've played on so much things. But like, I mean, everyone knows that. I mean, I grew up on that stuff. all the Stanley stuff. You know, I mean, that stuff just really helped me define my own style. And getting into my pentatonic, getting that from Stanley Clarke also. So Stanley was probably one of the main guys that I studied and learned just about everything that I could get my hands on. You know, even the stuff he did on acoustic bass, Spanish phases for string bass, you know. I didn't even own an acoustic bass, but I would mess around with that stuff. You know, all that stuff. Stanley's just the man. He still is. I think everyone knows that. And I never knew how to get this next harmonic, but I figured out my own way by hitting it up here with my thumb. I also found out you could fret this note and stretch, which I could never do. Hard stuff for me, but that was always the easier way. But Jaco, when I first heard that, I had a hard time believing it was a bass when I first heard Portrait of Tracy. Man, but I stayed up all night, literally until sunup, until I learned that song. You know, and I didn't learn it exactly right, I'm sure, but in searching for it, that's what's developed my whole harmonics, using the overtones on the bass. That's where it all came from, that one night of study on Jaco's Portrait of Tracy. And what I learned from that, there's a couple chords that I still use, and it's in the key of G or C. I got that from Jaco, and same thing, fourth down. All right? So you get, or here. So C, G. All right? And then I realized also from that song, Portrait of Tracy, that these two harmonics can be taken down a half step, and they still work. So, that's pretty, that flat 5 in there. So all that I got from that song. I also realized that a lot of these harmonics that you get from the third, between the 3rd and 5th fret, I tell you what, we'll just stick with these for now, the same ones. That pattern, it's like a backwards diagonal, kind of going from there to there. Right? I see it more as a shape than I see it as notes. I know that shape will work in C or G, and whatever works on these two notes is also going to work a 4th lower. Okay, but I can take that shape and invert it. So instead of here, now it gets a little weird, but I get here. All right, same thing, a 4th lower. All right, same thing, a half step down, gets real weird. All right, so from there I have 4 chords, then these 4. Pretty stuff, and all that's within these 2 frets, 3 frets, and I got that all from that song, Portrait of Tracy. You know, and that, all of that is only from the here. You know, right here, there's a chord. You know, it's all right in the beginning of the tune. It's amazing what can be gotten from that song. And that's just one of many Jaco things. You know, the Donna Lee, Teen Down. I mean, I don't know any bass player that hasn't learned that. Jaco is really the one that got all of us playing jazz lines. And I'm not even good at it, but he got me there. He got me where I'm at. And again, it's from taking a Jaco song, staying up all night, and learning it note for note until I was close, you know. And I was doing this, you know, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I think, if I've got the years right. So that's Jocko. But then there was Larry Graham. Now, Larry Graham was coming straight from funk, you know, in my mind. And he was the master of being able to lay on one note and just making that one note just say everything you needed to say. Where Stanley, you know, I learned how to solo through different things, playing pentatonics and different types of thumbing things. And Jocko, you know, harmonics and harmony. Larry Graham, I learned how to just go, right? Stand, right? But he would just lay right on that one. And I was like, man. And I tell you, here's a little thing that people don't know about me anyway. It was that one note groove that started me going down and up with my thumb. Because as a kid, I could not get that right bounce. I didn't have it. It was, you know, it's not straight. It's, you know, it's got pulses in it. So Reggie started saying, well, why don't you try going down and up with your thumb? And he started teaching me to do it that way. And that was the start of everything. It actually came from Larry Graham. So that's pretty neat, little trivia. Dinner conversation. But also Larry Graham has one of the most complex thumb patterns I've ever heard, and I still don't know it correctly, but it's a song he does called Hair. If you ever get a chance to go back to an old Graham Central Station record and find a song called Hair, you know. And that's not even right. His is more skanky and just a lot better. I mean, he's so cool. But there's so many things from Larry Graham. If you go back and find some of the old Sly and the Family Stone, and there's even some videos coming out now with Sly and the Family Stone. Check them out and check out Larry on bass. He's a master at simplicity, but also his stuff can be so simple that it's so complex at the same time. He was the first guy I ever really heard use fuzz on the bass. You know, I mean, just like a guitar. Bad example, but man, he's so great at it. Go find all the Larry Graham you can find. But another guy who is an amazing bass player that's influenced me that people probably wouldn't think of is Prince. Prince had a song called Let's Work. I don't even remember which album it was on, but great bass work on all the old Time and the old Prince, early Prince stuff. Amazing bass work. And sometimes you don't know who was actually playing the bass, but I think a lot of that was actually Prince on bass. Amazing, amazing bass work. But like I said earlier, there's the James Jamersons, there's all these names that I can't even think of. You know, there's Anthony Jackson was playing a lot of that stuff. With Money and a lot of the Gamble and Huff music. There's just great bass players. If you go back and listen to any of that music from the 70s, 60s, and 80s even, you'll get a good insight as to where I'm coming from. Because a lot of the people pay attention to a lot of the flashy things that I do. But the way I like to say it is I take the groove that I learned from these James Jamersons and all these guys that played what would seem to be simpler music, even though it wasn't. They played maybe simpler bass lines, but their groove was really what was dominant. I try to take that, and then if I'm flashy, I make sure I put it on top of that strong groove. And I think that's the only reason people will listen to me be flashy, is if it's grooving. So if you're going to learn all the flashy stuff that I'm doing, make sure that you're grooving first, okay? And these guys that I mentioned, these are good people to learn how to groove from. Speaking of Bootsy, got the chance to record with them recently for my Yin Yang project. And, you know, at the time we were recording, we didn't know what it was going to be for. I just happened to find myself in his town, in his hometown. And J.D. Blair, who plays drums with me most of the time, is just he's a Parliament, you know, freak, you know, Funkadelics. And I'm a Bootsy fan back from James Brown and the Parliament days. And we said, well, let's just see if we can get a hold of Bootsy. And we located his number and called him up and actually got him on the phone. It was great. I said, hello, Bootsy. You know, I didn't really know what to call him. Hello, Bootsy. This is Victor Wooten. How you doing? He said, oh, everything's on the one, baby. And I was like, yeah, this is Bootsy. I was trying to be cool, though. I really was. I was trying, okay, yeah. But in my insides, I was jumping. I'm talking to Bootsy. You know, I'm still a kid when it comes to these guys. But he invited us to his house. So we went to Bootsy's house, JD and myself and our engineer, soundman Kurt Story. And we just went into Bootsy's studio and just played around. You know, he said, man, let's just record something. So JD and I had a groove that we had played around with at sound check. And so, you know, he said, yeah, let's put that down. Just put that down. You play it. So JD and I went in there and played. And Bootsy had me play all the bass. And he was just being Bootsy in the background, coming up with these great lines. And at one point he said, instead of saying what time it is, he was telling me that I was committing a crime on the bass. You know, he was saying, what crime is it, baby? You know, that's what crime it is. And that's what wound up on the record. You know, that's what crime it is. And we just thought it was the greatest. So it's me playing bass, but Bootsy's just, you know, putting the real flavor all over it. He's just a great person, you know. He just really welcomed us into his household. And he even played some stuff for me, you know. And so just being in his presence, you know, it's almost like it's full circle. You know, I grow up listening to this guy, and here I am at his house. You know, it's definitely a dream come true. And I'm grateful for Bootsy, to Bootsy, just for all he's done, not just for me, but for the bass world in general. I know that I wouldn't be here, at least not in this way, if it weren't for Bootsy. So I thank him for that. Great. A lot of people that inspire me that aren't bass players. And I think it's important to get inspiration outside of your instrument, and even outside of music if you can. My parents, I would have to start there. My parents are very, very inspiring people. They are people that will get anything done. Whatever has to be done, they will get it done. They don't feel that they have to go outside of the household or something. Good example, I remember one day we needed more space in our bedroom because I always shared a room with Joseph and Rudy. And we were getting big at this time, you know. So my mom said, you guys need a triple bunk bed. So I was like, okay, where are we going to get it? She went to the wood store, came home with some wood, some nails, and just before the day was over, we had a triple bunk bed. And I'm like, man, you know, I mean, and growing up with a mom and a dad that way, you know, has really inspired me. So I take that to the stage. You know, people have seen me break a string. Some people have seen my strap break in the middle of a show and my bass hits the ground. And I'm like, well, that's now part of the performance. Let's go with it. It's improvising. And my parents are some of the best improvisers I know. And I don't mean with music, but with life. And improvising just means making do with what you have. You know, you don't have to have rehearsed it. My mom had never made a bunk bed before, you know. My dad had never booked a band before. When we were 5, I was 5 and Reggie was 13, and he starts booking us with Curtis Mayfield and all these people. They didn't know how to do it, but they also didn't know how not to do it. And they did it. And so I take that to the stage. So my inspiration would start there. Filters down to my brothers. My brothers took after my parents. They were the same way. They are the same way. And so for me, being the youngest of the 5 brothers, it's like I had 7 parents, or 6 parents rather, my 4 brothers and my mom and my dad. They brought me up in that fashion of being an improviser. You know, and again, when I use the word improvising, I don't just mean with music. That's how you can get inspired from anywhere. Bruce Lee is another big influence. You know, I've been in the martial arts since I was a kid, but to see someone like Bruce Lee gain control over himself so much that he could control anyone else, you know, and not even have to hurt them, that's amazing. You know, that's self-control. And I've always been a self-control person, wanting to know everything about myself and be able to control myself. So I take influence from Bruce Lee and bring that to the stage. Anyone that has that much control and over themselves to where they start making everybody else better. I love people that are doing that. Michael Jordan is a prime example. Tiger Woods is a prime example. All the musicians that I stated earlier are prime examples. And it's because they have gotten so good that it allows us to get better. And so that brings me to probably one of the biggest influences now is the people that I see starting to play music now. Like these great bass players that I see coming up. You know, and maybe they're not doing much yet, but I can just see their potential. Because of Stanley Clarke, because of Jocko, because of Bootsy, because of Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Bruce Lee, Tiger Woods, all these kind of people, because of them, it's made me a better musician. So I can see that the better I get, the better the next generation is going to get. So, you know, if I can work really hard, it's just going to help the next generation. So that's a big influence. And that really keeps me going, keeps me practicing. But at the same time, you know, I think about birds. I go out and I hear a robin singing a song, or a chickadee, or a blue jay, or whatever, or even just a crow, you know, that seems to be screaming. But if you listen close, their screams mean something. Where did they learn that? You know, who taught them that stuff? You know, music school, you know, bird singing school, what, you know, where did they get it? And so that's inspiring to me. Some kind of way they're self-taught. They're pulling this stuff out of somewhere. It's like out of this void, you know. But when it comes to music, if I want to learn to play bass, I think I have to go get lessons. How did the animals do it? That's inspiring thought. You know, lessons are good, but there's a lot inside of us that can be pulled out. And I learned that, you know, you get to a point like Michael Jordan and these guys, gets to a point where there's not a whole lot someone else can teach them. You know, after they've passed all their teachers, they've learned what the teachers have to say, which is important. You got to go inside at a certain point and start pulling your own self out of yourself. I hope that makes sense. That's inspiring. That's self-inspiration. And I think that's the ultimate inspiration. When I was about 5 years old, maybe 6, which means my oldest brother Reggie was 8 years older than me at the time. I can't remember who it was, but someone saw us playing, you know, Reggie, Roy, and Rudy, and Joseph, and myself playing as the Wooten brothers. And they liked it, and they got us to do a mini tour, a small tour opening for Curtis Mayfield. This was when we were living in California, so Sacramento, Oakland, that area. And I look back on it now, especially now that I have kids, and I think, man, how many parents would, you know, book their 5-year-olds and their 13-year-olds on this tour, you know. But anyway, we're playing some original music, some Jackson 5, some Motown, a lot of James Brown, Sly Stone, and we're doing these shows. And I mean, to us, we weren't kids. In our mind, we were just musicians, you know. And so we got to relate with their musicians. And one of the things that I take from Curtis Mayfield, and I often hear my brothers talk about it, and it didn't dawn on me till I was much older, is he had an amazing intensity when he played. Like, you know, James Brown the same way. James Brown would be playing, they'd be rocking, and he'd say, bring it down, and they'd just get real quiet, real soft. There's not too many people that can get quiet like James Brown, but Curtis Mayfield would play a whole concert down there. He'd play a whole night really soft and intense. I mean, you'd be on the edge of your seat the whole night. And I mean, it'd be... Freddy's dead, you know. I mean, real soft, and he'd be singing in that high falsetto, and man, you know, the women would be going crazy, and it was so intense at a soft volume. How do you do that? You know, it's rare, if ever, that you hear that nowadays. You know, the thing now is just to play loud, you know, bang them over the head. But who can play soft? Who can say what they want to say and make people listen in a soft voice? Wow, Curtis Mayfield was the master. And I really recommend going back and finding anything with Curtis Mayfield you can. If you can find some live video footage, even better. And you'll see what I'm talking about. And man, I'm just fortunate at how lucky we were at the early age. I mean, I was 5, you know, playing my Univox bass. And we're out there with Curtis Mayfield, you know, learning all these musical lessons. You know, you take them where you can get them. What I like to do is, when I'm practicing, I like to turn what I'm practicing into music. So I started doing this when I got a job playing dinner music at a health food restaurant called the Slice of Life in Nashville, Tennessee, not long after I'd moved to Tennessee. And I didn't have a big repertoire. I didn't have a lot of songs, but it was dinner music, so they really wanted a mood, you know, more so than songs. And so I took a lot of the things that I would practice, a lot of exercises that I would practice, and created moods for people to eat by. And here's some of the things that I would do. I'll show you a tapping exercise. And this is just practicing tapping a scale. And I'm going to do it in G, okay? Starting from the 15th fret. Oh, let's turn it on. So if I'm going to go down G major, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the chord, okay, G major. And all I'm going to do is, starting with my left index finger, then I'm going to go up to the 5, right index, then right middle, or either ring finger. I'm going to use my ring finger. That's the 9, okay? So you got G, D, A. Then I'm going to put the 10, okay, on top, B. Right? Now I could also go just 1 and then go up 5 and keep going up 5th. Right? I'm going to do it this way. And the key is to build strength in the fingers by letting each note ring. So I'm pressing down all the time, right? And whenever I want to hit a note, I just lift that finger. Okay, now it's starting to sound more like a piano rather than, most of the time when we tap, we just do that. Okay, let them ring. Then just go down the scale. Okay. Now, once you're comfortable with that, you just make it more musical. Just have fun with it. Okay, so now I'm practicing but it's musical. Someone could sit here and listen to me practice. So I'd practice in front of this dinner audience for hours. You know, it was fun. Show you an even easier way to do this. Is you're going to play the same upper chord, these 3 notes, for every 2 notes. So then when this goes down a half step, this doesn't move. So, all right, so you go. Then I move. Okay, so now you have a couple ways of doing it. Now, if I want to, once I go 1, 3, 5, I'm 1, 5, 9, 10, I can go up to the 5 again. So. Creativity is valuable for creating your own voice, for one. And creativity and inspiration are very, very similar. Fine line that separates the definition of both in my mind. But a lot of people ask me where I get ideas from. And a lot of times I don't really have answers. But it comes with just having an open mind. And a lot of it, I think also, this is a guess, comes from not being afraid to go there. Because I don't think I'm any more creative than anyone else, but I will go there to that point. I'll take those chances where others will play it safe. And I'm not the type to play it safe most of the time. So a lot of the times, what may seem creative to me is where, let's say tapping, okay? I'm gonna play, okay? Wow, man, how do you come up with that? It's creative. To me, that's just playing like a piano. I see piano players sit down at the piano and do that. If I heard someone play that on the piano, it may not sound that creative. But if I take that exact same thing and put it on a different instrument where you're not used to hearing that, then it sounds creative. Okay, so what I do a lot of the times to help give me inspiration or new ideas, creative ideas, is I will look at what other instruments will do. Okay? If I want to be a great bass player, which of course I do, I need to listen to bass players. Okay? If I want to be a great musician, I need to listen to all of music. If I want to transcend all of that, I need to even get experience, influence, and find creativity outside of music. Okay? So, we'll stick with music, taking piano techniques and just putting them on the guitar or on the bass. Well, I don't know how to do that. Okay, give your bass to a piano player and have them lay it in their lap and play it like a piano. Immediately they'll come out with music. And it's going to sound different than any guitar player or any bass player that you've ever heard. Then maybe you have a tape recorder and you learn what they did. All right? Maybe you take a saxophone player and do the same thing. Have them hold have them hold the bass, with the headstock up by their mouth and finger some of their saxophone patterns. Because think about this. Look at this. What is this? This is a saxophone player. If I take this and lay it on its side, what do we got? We got Stanley Jordan. Okay? So now we can not only take saxophone lines like Donna Lee, we can now take saxophone technique and immediately apply it to the bass. Okay? Drum rudiments, obvious. Okay, I don't even have to talk much about that. But you can take paradiddles, rhythmic cues, all these different drum rhythms, and start applying them to the bass. Okay, you can do them between the two hands, or you can do them between one hand. Okay, I'll explain that real quick. A paradiddle is right, left, 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 left. Right? You know, that's the easy translation. But what if we just put all that paradiddle in one hand? Okay, between thumbing and plucking. So, thumb, pluck, thumb, pluck, pluck. Da, 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 da. Right? And now, okay, my mind's starting to think in a different way. That's creative. Okay, but it's still just taken from other techniques. You know, it's all out there. Guitar techniques, tapping, fuzz, harmonics, all that kind of stuff. Okay, now, let's get outside of music. Okay, in martial arts, they have different types of strikes. Maybe it's a palm strike or something. You know, you may take that technique and apply it to the bass and see what it sounds like. Okay, you know a person who's a martial artist, or he plays golf, or whatever. Give them your bass. What will they come out with? Okay, if I give my bass to a bass player, and this is no knock on any bass players because there are great ones out there, but I know 99%, I'm pretty much know what's going to come out. It's going to be thumbing, tapping, fingers, you know, or a combination of chords or whatever. If I give this to a golfer, I have no idea what's going to come out. That's where the sparks fly. That's where the creation really is. You take someone that's never seen the bass, they may turn it upside down and play the back of it. It may seem stupid at first, you know, but I'm sure so did Stanley Jordan. So did Bela Fleck when he said, I want to play jazz on the banjo. So did Future Man when he said, I want to play electronic drums on a guitar body. You know, so did Einstein, so did Tesla. You know, all these people were crazy. They said Monk was crazy until they realized how much of a genius he was. In my mind, everybody's a genius. It's just, are you going to go there to find it out? Are you going for it or not? So realize your geniusness and express it. Have fun with it. Just express it. Back to the tapping. You know, I was talking about just, let's just stick with G major for a minute. Okay? Right? And I'm going to play, you make a chord by skipping every other note. 1, skip the 2, play the 3, skip the 4, play the 5, or there. Now I could tap that, and I've got a G major chord. Right? Another way I like to tap a G major chord is playing 1, 5, 9, major third. Right? I got the 10 up here, major third. Okay, now it gives me G major. If I take that third down a half step, all of a sudden it's a totally different sound just by moving one finger. From here, major, minor. Okay? So when I'm going down the scale, I'm just really going between major and minor. Here's G major, F sharp minor, E minor, D major, C major, B minor, A minor, G major. Right? So everything I just did there was either this, major, or minor. Okay? Now there's so many different ways of doing this. I could take this G major scale, right? And I could take this hand, put it up on the third, 5, 1, 5. All right? know, so the thing is, when you start playing with these different voices, you know, and right now I'm just sticking with major, right? Major thirds. When you start playing with different voices just start triggering different parts of your brain, which is going to bring out different ideas, different parts of your creativeness, you know. And so my point being here is that if I give you something to say, and if I just say, here's G major, don't just stay there, you know. There's so many things so many different ways that we could do this, but I'm only showing you a couple. You know, use your own brains and start figuring out, you know, other ways of doing it. And so hopefully that helps. Going down the G major scale, I was just playing major and minor chords, you know. It's another way to do it. Change the rhythm. Flam on top, a drum flam. A lot of times, I guess, when I get asked questions about music, I get asked about how do I do something that's pretty flashy, you know, and I like to call that the icing on the cake. And so I just want to spend a moment just talking about the cake, the groove, what's really important, what's going to keep you working as a bass player. And for most of the time, it's going to be playing with the fingers. You know, I spend a lot of time talking about thumbing, talking about tapping, but it's just going to be able to hold down a groove with your fingers, making these fingers sound even, you know. And so I like to go back to playing scales, okay? And let's just say I'm going to play E major. E major scale. Whether you're playing country, whether you're playing reggae, jazz, or funk, can you play that scale in that style and make someone's head bob? And if you can do that, then okay, go ahead and put some flash on top of it. But let's go back to the very basics. So if I'm going to take an E major scale, and my goal, I'm just going to and just try to make that scale groove. Okay, I don't have to worry, I'm not worrying about chord changes or anything. This is just a scale. Make it groove. Right? Jazz, whatever. Work it from a scale. And can you make that groove? The basics of all basics. Can you make it groove? Real quick, one last exercise just to get the fingers of both hands working together. It's a thing I used to do. I used to bring my bass to school during lunch and practice this. It's just running scales up the neck. I'll start with major. From the lowest fret I can, F major. Then go up a half step, very basic. Then do it with no pauses. major, minor, major, minor. I'd go all the way up as high as I could, then I'd go to the A string and start working my way down. And work my way all the way down. By the time I got back down here, it was a good exercise. Very, very simple, but a good exercise. And a lot of the times, I think you're going to learn your most from the simple things. When we want to get into bass playing or anything, we want to jump to the complicated stuff, when really we should start from the ground up. They call this a bass for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.